So, week 3 of this series of Reading to Learn Languages. Today, we're going to talk about culture and language. So, language and culture are inextricably linked, right? And some of the things that I would tell people is to invest your time in input that teaches culture. That's really important. So, reading an authentic news source or piece of literature as much as possible, and we'll talk about some times to maybe not do that. Seek to understand, and understanding culture is to be able to talk and relate to people, find similarities and differences. And here I have learned what people make, do, and how they see the world. And I think ACTFL describes it, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, much better than I did here. So the three P's, is it products, practices, and perspectives, right? So what people make, do, and how they see the world. So I think that's really important. And once you've gotten into reading, right, you can start reading, and you've invested a lot of time in read and in you've got a practice going, right? You know how to not get frustrated, because then you'll stop doing it, right? And you won't get the benefits. Invest a lot of time that's going to teach you about culture, about the history, about what people make, do, and how they see the world. This is one of my very favorite resources. It's a Chrome browser extension. It's called ReadLang. Um, I think they talk all about, they kind of talk about the mechanics of it on their website that you see here. So it's, you install the web reader, and you can translate words. You can sort of scroll over things, and which is really helpful. Um, and it really helps mitigate all those difficulties that we were talking about. And then you can make flashcards out of them. But really, while that's helpful, my very favorite feature of ReadLang is all the suggestions that it feeds you. It'll feed you, news in Italian or whatever it is, right? It's really, really, really robust. I think that's the best part of it, is that, searching for culturally relevant reading, this makes it really easy, and it makes the practical side of it really easy. And I want to say that you can upload PDF. So if you do things like, get books from the public domain or anything like that, anything that you've got PDF, you should be able to upload it and read. So more on the web, I absolutely love Realia. And so here, you know, this isn't obviously an authentic product. This is from, I want to say, Indiana in the United States, McDonald's. But one thing that I really like about McDonald's advertisements, Realia, the things they publish all over the world, is that it's very readable. It's meant to be very easy to read and very appealing. Lots of visuals that support what's going to be talked about, and it shows some really interesting things about cultural practices. So for example, this is a Japanese McDonald's that you can Google. Any of these global brands, of course, you can Google and you can find all their flyers, all their websites from all over the world. And it's a really, 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 really robust source for beginning readers. Um, if you look up a Korean McDonald's, I don't think they have breakfast. They certainly didn't when I lived there. What in many countries serves as traditional breakfast foods. They're sort of Egg McMuffin, things like that, because that's not what people eat in the mornings. They serve the same kinds of meals every day. The McDonald's that in Japan I used to see served some of those things, even though, traditional Japanese breakfast wouldn't necessarily have that. But Japan loves, I believe they love things from other cultures. I've so seen things from all over the world, and they do them really well, in my opinion. Or if you go to France, you'll see a lot of the halal Big Mac, Big Mac chicken version of chicken, chicken Big Macs. Basically, they're halal so that they can be eaten So I find it really interesting the perspectives that these global brands can give on cultures, because it's really a matter of survival for them, right? If they can't sell in their market, they're not going to be successful. So they have to learn culture, and they provide really rich resources for all of us learning languages. So I've shared or saved this people in Espanol. So I love sort of tabloids for learning languages, or gossip sites, and there's so many. I can't necessarily get into them necessarily. It might be a quick Google search, because of there's so many languages that people out here could potentially be learning. But the takeaway is easy, accessible, fun reading, things that are interesting. So People Magazine, or the equivalents thereof, things that just aren't hard to read, right? Things that you're going to really enjoy, things that are really practical. And they're all over the web. I'm sharing this People in Espanol, but there's tons of sites like Hola, which, is countries in Europe have all versions of these magazines. They're kind of the equivalents of what we have in the States. If you're learning Spanish, you're lucky, because all over the United States, we have Spanish language publications. They're super easily accessible, and they're just growing all the time. I'm really loving. It's been some years since I've used Duolingo, but every time I go back and check in, I think it's fun. I do have some criticisms of Duolingo, because people will say to me, "It's probably not very good, but I'm using Duolingo." I think there's lots of good things about Duolingo. I think what I don't like, my biggest criticism would be some of the irrelevance of some of the phrases that are being taught. If I were in charge, if this were my app, I would probably be having people translate things that are really useful. However, the what they do have people translate does kind of teach a lot of good grammar points. So I'd focus more for beginners, more on survival language. But I noticed that in some of their languages, some of their bigger, or more used languages, it's constantly growing the features on these different languages. So they've got the chat bots, which again is a way to, reading what they've said and speaking back, which is great. I love the stories. I noticed that in French they had some stories, and you could play along with them and then answer the questions. You could listen to the audio as well. I want to say that their podcast, they're getting stories, real stories from Medium. So they're always improving. I think at the end of the day, I shared with you my only current criticism of them. I think it's fun. I think it's addictive. I think it's interesting, and I think that they're adding new features all the time. And so, if you have a language, um, learning how to read in a language, they've got a lot of great resources in a lot of their languages. So here, I really love graphic novels. So this is in French, obviously, but this would look completely different, manga in Japanese. So it's highly visual, lots and lots and lots of support, and a great way to learn culture, because they're going to be in the stories, and then you have all the pictures to support you as you're reading. The last resource I want to talk about are for culture is the types of things that you find in the supermarket. So those sort of everyday things. So this was actually bought in France at a supermarket. So at the checkout stand. Um, so I really love taking the personality different quizzes in French, and you see, what's your relationship with money? This one's all about, and they have tons of them. What's your relationship with the truth? What's your relationship with your closest friends? What's your relationship with spirituality? Right? they're not meant to be taken too seriously, but this is a great way to learn vocabulary. Now, I know that you wouldn't necessarily have access to that kind of thing, but if you are traveling and you're going to study in your target language, I think these are the kind of things that you really want to look for. So, going into a supermarket and getting the flyers, and you can actually look those up online. Going to the checkout, what magazines are they selling? It's a great resource. And I'm actually in another video where I'm going to share with you um, a resource to access this kind of stuff in reading for pleasure. So next week, we're going to talk all about reading to learn. Until next time.